you're going to get pissed off at me. If you're against the legalization and decriminalization of marijuana, if you think every marijuana dealer should be in jail and you think that marijuana is the gateway drug to hell, you should be pissed off at what you're about to hear. If you're a small marijuana operator operating a licensed grow, a small licensed grow in Humboldt County, 1 acre, you're already pissed off by what's going on. You're going to be even more pissed off when you hear what's going on, when you hear what we have to say. How did we end up talking about this subject? Just about, well, I guess it's a couple weeks ago now, there was a 6-person homicide out in the Mojave Desert, out in San Bernardino County, the La Mirage area, and for people that aren't from Southern California or don't know Southern California, this is a pretty desolate area. Like, they used to film old Western movies here. It's tumbleweeds, dirt roads. That's the kind of community it is. 6 people murdered, a hell of bullet casings or shell casings, all over the place. 4 of the bodies were lit on fire. And I got a call the next day from a local producer of a news outlet here. And understandably, San Bernardino's, it was a county where it happened. They're doing a homicide investigation. They're not releasing, nor should they be releasing, details to the media right away. And this producer asked me, hey, this is what they got. What do you think happened? And my first thing was, hey, that's an area where there's a lot of unlicensed cannabis growing. It probably had something to do with unlicensed cannabis. And then I said, or perhaps methamphetamine conversion. But here's why I said unlicensed cannabis, Mark. It's not because I'm an oracle or a genius. It's because guess what happened in 2020? You probably forgot. A 7-person homicide in Riverside County at a marijuana grow. Like, these marijuana grows have been home to some extraordinary acts of violence. And to be clear, when I say these marijuana grows, this wasn't a marijuana grow site. This was literally the middle of nowhere. But the sheriff of San Bernardino has come out and said that it was related. We don't know exactly how yet, but it was related to the unlicensed cannabis trade. Mark, Prop 64, that is the vehicle by which we have legal marijuana in the state of California. It was voted on in 2016. It was passed. It went into effect in 2018. Since then, we've had legal cannabis in this state, and it has been a utter disaster. Here's what Prop 64 promised. And by the way, just so everybody that fought for this, that's in the cannabis business, that believes in cannabis, just so you know, this bill was, or this proposition was, the reality was it was never even about marijuana. And that's going to piss some people off that I just said that. It was about social justice. It was about people who don't believe in incarcerating people for crimes. And it was about changing how our justice system handles certain drug crimes. That's really what this case was about. Who led the push for Prop 64? Your good friend, Mark, the current governor of California, Gavin Newsom. He was lieutenant governor at the time. He was head of this blue ribbon panel that put together the plan to bring regulated marijuana to the state. And here's where the tax money was supposed to go to that came from Prop 64. First, the funds go to regulatory and administrative workload costs needed to implement, administer, and enforce Prop 64, not covered by license fees. Specific amounts of the funds then go to, this is the one I want you to pay attention to, Mark, research and activities related to the legalization of cannabis and the past effects of cannabis-related criminalization. The remaining funds go to youth education, prevention, early intervention, treatment programs. I have a request of society today, Mark. Here's what my request is. I get it that over the last 30 years, 40 years, there's behaviors, there's actions, there's drugs, there's words that were acceptable 40 years ago that are certainly not acceptable today. And I'm all for that, right? I agree with that. I'm glad that society has evolved and we've become more refined and we've changed what's, quote, okay with us and what's not okay with us. But I think where we get into danger is when we try to then go back and apply today's norms and acceptances to something that happened 30 years ago. Those are two separate things. Those are two separate things. How we felt about something 30 years ago and how we punished something 30 years ago is different than it is today, and we shouldn't try to apply our today's rules to behavior then and have this incredible guilt about it. We should just change laws that we don't think are effective and move on. LA Times article that came out last year. Now, LA Times definitely say what you want about them, but they called out California on this. This is a quote from them. 6 years later, after the law was passed, 2016, 6 years later, California's legal weed industry is in disarray with flawed policies, legal loopholes, stiff regulations hampering longtime growers and sellers. Despite expectations that it would become a model for the rest of the country, the state has instead provided a cautionary tale of lofty intentions and unkept promises. I could go on forever about this, Mark, talking about all the flaws in the law and why we're in such disarray today.